Today we're going to be talking about Blacks in Quebec, a research project of the Black Community Resource Center. Our two speakers are John Davids, who is a project researcher for the Black in Quebec project being undertaken by the Black Community Resource Center. He possesses a political science background, having graduated from York University with an MA in political science. He also has experience in international development and has worked in Africa and Europe. Xiaoyan Fang is a research assistant also for this ongoing project. She graduated from McGill University with a BA in psychology and a first-class honors and a minor in mathematics. And she has a research background in intergroup relations. She's conducted studies on how psychological needs are impacted by people's socio-cultural identities and intergroup context. So I will pass the mic to John and Xiaoyan.
Thank you, Patrick. And thank you everyone for joining us today as part of this Lunch and Learn organized by QUESCREN. Before I even start this presentation, I wanted to really give a very special thank you to Ms. Lorraine O'Donnell, Anna Hunt, and Patrick Donovan for inviting us. And the Black in Quebec project is a project being undertaken by the Black Community Resource Center. And it's being funded by the federal government and the provincial government through Canadian Heritage, as well as the Secretariat for Relations with English-speaking Quebecers. I also want to just give a very special thank you for the wider network of supporters and affiliates and partners who are also play a very key role in helping us make this event today happen, as well as with the wider project. Okay, so the Black Community Resource Center is a growing resource-based organization, and our aim is to strengthen community capacity by providing professional support to organizations and individuals in need. Three of our wider goals are to help with empowering communities, strengthen careers, and to further encourage education. Furthermore, the Black Community Resource Center is the Secretariat for the wider Black Community Forum. And the forum consists of 14 organizations whose mandate is to provide services to the Black communities in Montreal. And aside from that, we also have a growing number of partners and affiliations that we hope to continue growing and interacting and engaging with. This is the research team. It consists of myself, John Davids, but starting on the left as well as Dr. Clarence Bain. He's the lead researcher for the Black in Quebec project and president of the BCRC. Rayanne Francis is the managing director of the BCRC, and she also plays a key role in our project. John Davids is myself, and Xiaoyan Fang is the research assistant to this project. I also wanted to introduce a new member to the team. Her name is Aileen Galutira, and she's going to be an intern with us throughout the course of the summer. So she'll also be contributing greatly to the undertaking of this project. Moving on to the purpose and the goals of what our project is. It's firstly to reduce gaps in knowledge and information between the community and wider society. And in order to do so, we hope to provide in-depth and more thorough data and analysis on challenges facing the English-speaking Black community to different agents in the society, including wider Black community organizations, as well as institutions in the private, educational, and public sector. The second purpose and goal is to explore and provide recommendations on the unique barriers facing the ESBC in Quebec directly to policymakers. And the third goal is to advance social and economic participation, as well as civic engagement of the English-speaking Black community, especially in a collective and an individual sense, but especially to those who are uninformed or isolated about the services, resources, and opportunities which are available to them.
Yep, and with the purpose and goals of our project in mind, I would like to introduce to you our main research question of our current project. The main research question we are trying to answer is, what is the objective and subjective well-being of the English-speaking Black community, the ESBC, in Quebec compared to other subpopulations? And here, by other subpopulations, they are French-speaking Black community, French-speaking non-visible minority, English-speaking non-visible minority, and also lastly, the total population of Quebec. And also, in order to answer this research question and to explain to you what specific determinants we are using in order to measure the objective and subjective well-being, we will proceed to talk about the research design of the Black in Quebec project in details. Yep. So with respect to the research design, first of all, we want to talk about the methodology we adopt in this project. In our research, we draw on the complex adaptive system theory to describe the objective and subjective well-being of certain active agents integrated in the system. We also present here in our slides a very simplified drawing just to better picture the idea of the complex adaptive system theory. So the complex adaptive system, it describes a dynamic system where there exist human agents who are capable of thoughts, and they're represented as various subpopulations or individuals. And specifically in our current project, we see the Canadian social and economic states as a finite landscapes where different subpopulations are constantly interacting and performing social activities in order to adapt and attain a desired objective and subjective well-being, or we say fitness for the group in the system. However, these interactions between different subpopulations, it could include collaborations, cooperations, or even competition, etc. And these interactions lead to different levels of gaps in their states of well-being when compared to other subpopulations in the system. It is also important to keep in mind here that this is a very complex and non-linear system, such that there also exists other active agents such as non-human species or unpredictable environmental elements in the system. So for example, the current COVID-19, it's a good illustration for an unpredictable element in the complex adaptive system. And this is to say that we are living in a very complex and constantly changing system where cause and effects are not predetermined or known. In our project, in order to reflect the states of well-being of certain subpopulations, including the ESVC, the proxy variables from the system we are looking at are economic, education, health, sociocultural, and psychosocial. And these 5 different aspects of proxy variables are meant to give us a sense of the socioeconomic status of the ESVC compared to other subpopulations in a quantitative way. And next, we'll present to you our analysis of gaps with respect to these 5 different proxy variables among the ESVC and other subpopulations.
Yeah, thank you, Fang. And the analysis of gaps represents the second component of our research design. It's a document that has been organized into 2 parts, which looks at gaps in outcomes. So these proxy variables that Fang mentioned as measures of fitness or state of well-being. The second part of it looks at gaps in information in terms of understanding the social situation facing members of the English-speaking Black community, as well as the wider community and other subgroups as well. So I wanted to start with some gaps in outcome, and drawing from the thematic areas. We wanted to start on the theme of economics. What this data or what this table here, what these 2 tables show you are gaps in average income and median income between total Black population between the Black population in Quebec and the total population of Quebec. This is derived directly from the census data, and what these tables show you is the difference, the change that's occurred between 2001 and 2016. So in Quebec, while both average income and median income increased for both the Black population and the total population in this time period, the income gap between the Black population and total population has also increased and become bigger. In terms of average income, the precise number is $3,543 that the gap has widened by, and in terms of median income, the gap has widened by $2,025. The second, another variable or another two proxy variables we're looking at in regards to the economic fitness of the English-speaking Black community is the unemployment rate, as well as those living below low-income cutoff status. So it's another measurement for a poverty line of sorts. And essentially in both of these tables, what it shows us is that while both English-speaking Blacks and French-speaking Black populations have almost twice as high of an unemployment rate compared to the other two subgroups, English-speaking and French-speaking non-visible minority. And they're also twice as likely to be living below the low-income cutoff or below the poverty line compared to the English-speaking and French-speaking non-visible minority populations. The next set of data I want to show you kind of cuts across more than one thematic area. Here we're looking at income and educational attainment. I must note that this particular table is in regards to the Canadian population overall. And it tells us quite a few interesting things. So let me quickly dissect it. Firstly, one thing that this table shows is that as one increases their educational attainment, income grows for all four subgroups as they continue with their education. The question here is how it grows and to what degree. So if I want to just go subgroup by subgroup, we'll start with the blue bar, which represents white males in Canada. Between them having less than a high school, from the time they have less than a high school diploma to the time they've reached higher than a bachelor's degree in terms of educational attainment, average income, more than triples for this subgroup. Okay. With the next subgroup next to them is Black males. Again, as educational attainment increases, so does average income. However, the rate of increase, the rate of growth is nowhere near that of the previous subgroup. And by the end of their educational attainment, having higher than a bachelor's degree, nonetheless remain earning less than half of what the previous subgroup was making. Here, the third subgroup we're looking at is white females. This is where something kind of interesting happens, because before having less than while having less than a high school diploma, white females earn less than Black males and less than white males. Their income grows faster than that of Black males as well, to the point where it surpasses, towards the end of having higher than the bachelor degree, surpasses that of both Black females and Black males substantially. One thing I'm not going to forget, however, is that that gap between white females and white males is still substantially high. Second, the fourth subgroup I want to mention is Black females, who, while again also increase their income as they increase their educational attainment, nonetheless remain as the subgroup that ultimately has the least amount of income at the very end of their educational attainment as compared to the previous three subgroups. Thus, just to put in one sentence, in Canada, as educational attainment increases, so too does the gaps in average income between these subgroups. All right, so those were some of the gaps in outcome that we've kind of picked for this presentation. There's more that we're going to share in our analysis of gaps document, but for now I just wanted to shift towards gaps in information. Now, when it comes to gaps in information regarding the study of the English-speaking Black community, or even studies in race overall, there's already some gaps and issues with the source of information to begin with. The data that I just showed you in the previous tables is sourced from the from the census. One of them was 2016, but the other one was along a timeline. But essentially, there's already fundamental challenges in the reliability of the information that's sourced from issues such as sampling error, non-response bias, and as well as geographical challenges in regards to the reliability of information. In short, it might be some of the information we're getting out of less densely populated areas may not be as reliable as the data coming out of a place like Montreal, a CMA, as they say, a highly dense, a densely populated urban area. So that's just some of the standard kind of gaps that we were expecting to come anyways. The second kind of gap in information is on race-based data, and this has particularly affected our research in terms of health, as well as some of the other thematic areas that we intend to cover. In terms of health and race-based data, in Quebec, it's at this moment in time, it's not being collected, and despite calls, not just during this COVID era, but for years about trying to incorporate and collect more data on race. We're still at the point where it's not happening. We received a letter a few days ago directly from the Ministry of Social Services and Health detailing why that wasn't going to happen, despite the claim that it would at some point begin and it would be considered. So this is essentially one of the key challenge. It essentially is a key challenge of not just accessing data, but I would say one of the long-term overall goals of our project is to establish and consolidate the collection and frequent collection and rate of race-based data, and to have that be accepted by institutions and the other agents that make up what is Canada as a norm, as something that should be collected consistently.
Yep. So far, in regard to our research design, we have talked about our methodology of the project, which is the complex adaptive system theory, and also the analysis of gaps in outcome and as well as in information. We want to remind you that the complex adaptive system theory, it pictures Canadians' social and economic states as a non-linear system. And in this system, there are dynamic interactions between different subpopulations, including the ESBC and other comparative subgroups described in our project. These interactions create and lead to gaps in states of well-being for different subpopulations, which are reflected in our analysis of gaps. Our next step, we intended to design a survey which will be partly informed by the analysis of gaps we have, and then we will start collecting our data in the community and to analyze the states of objective and subjective well-being of the ESBC. Closing to the end of our project, we aim to gather quantitative and qualitative data reflecting the situation and challenges facing the ESBC. And more importantly, we want to share this information with the wider communities and to design strategies on what we need to do in order to improve the objective and subjective well-being of the ESBC. The very last component of our project we haven't mentioned, it's outreach, which is essentially a very, very important part of the Black in Quebec project.
Certainly, and the outreach, the way we've organized this in terms of the groups of people we're engaging in outreach with, we've organized them in three kind of groups. The first group is the research committee. It's a very small group of people who we consult with in regards of helping us further understand the gaps that are in place, as well as helping us design our survey in a better way. There's a very small group of people who have a research background or who are in the research community that we consult with. A few of them are in this meeting today. The second group is the focus group. So this represents a larger group of people, between 20 and 40, who we've been talking to in order to also help us gain an understanding of the gaps facing the community. Many of these people are leaders in their community, or the reason we chose them, I should say, is because they actively are engaging with the community on the ground, whereas we're stuck in confine doing our research isolated from the actual community at the moment. And lastly, the third group is the bigger group. It's the club, which is the community network. So essentially, we want to grow this community network to be as big as it can possibly be, because the survey the survey is going to be aimed at them, at this group, and so this hopefully includes people in the community themselves, as well as the wider network of partners, affiliates, anyone who has interest in what we're doing, we consider to be part of our community network, who we hope to have under one umbrella and grow. I should finally say that I do invite all of you to become a part of our community network, to reach out to us, especially, I'm sure we're gonna have some great conversation as soon as this presentation is finished in the question and answer. But if you do wanna find a little bit more information about the project, you can visit our project website, which is bcrcmontreal.com. We have our project page there. You can also join us on Facebook. We have our Black in Quebec page. We're currently, it's still currently being constructed a little bit here and there, but we're ready to go in terms of reaching out and starting to make connections with the wider community. And lastly, please don't hesitate to contact either myself or Xiaoyan directly through our emails right here, researcher@bcrcmontreal.com and ra@bcrcmontreal.com. Not just for any question, but for any subject, and if you have any point of interest or inquiry. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you, John and Xiaoyan. So we have a few questions, and we encourage everybody, if you have a question, please write that question in chat. So I'll start with our first question, which is from Ari Daglian from RESA, Quebec, who asks, what are the specific regions where you'll be looking at across Quebec?
We want to see as much of Quebec as the information allows. So essentially, our project covers the English-speaking Black community throughout all of Quebec, and we aim to reach those who we haven't been able to do so thus far. So the territorial constraints of our project is Quebec.
Yeah, and also to add on that, so like John mentioned, we have a research committee where it consists of 6 different researchers who we are consulting with. So one of the researcher, it's Yan Wonky, and then we were having a discussion about whether like it's possible to use geographical space to locate different group, and then so also based on the historical perspective as well, there are different geographical movement and also specific location within Quebec that the ESBC are mostly their residence area are. So it is interesting to us in the future. In our project, we might incorporate these elements, like by tracking geographical space. Yeah.
Okay, and I have another question kind of following up on that. In terms of the linguistic variable, will you be differentiating between English and French-speaking Black populations? And if so, have you noticed any kind of disparity in terms of income or you know, in your initial studies, if you looked at that?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question. So in regards to the focus of this project is on the English-speaking Black community, but we're trying to understand the English-speaking Black community in relation to other subgroups in Quebec, including the French-speaking Black community and including those 2 linguistic groups who aren't a part of the Black community, who are maybe the non-visible minority community. So in this sense, we're looking at race and language and the effect, and trying to comprehend the effect of both of those things in regards to this community and how both of those aspects, the effect can vary. So in some instances, in some of the data we've looked at, the French-speaking Black community is doing pretty well, relatively speaking, compared to the English-speaking Black community. And in fact, the 2 non-visible minority subgroups are in between first and 4th place. So there's some. So this is what we're trying to dissect. How does language play a role in the challenges facing the English-speaking Black community? How does race play a role? What are the similarities between the French-speaking Black community and English-speaking Black community? But what are the challenges that are unique to each of these communities as well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you for that. We have another question from Elan, and they say, you know, the English Language Arts Network, they say the most obvious question is why the persistent and increasing gap in average median income, unemployment, and income at all levels of educational attainment?
Yeah, to answer this question, I want to bring up the methodology, the CAS system we choose to adopt in this study. So the complex adaptive system, like we were saying, it's a dynamic system where there are different subgroups that they're interacting and they're performing different type of social activities. So it could be collaboration, it could be competition, because there are just limited resources available in the system. So by interactions and social activities, we haven't mentioned in our presentation here is that we are also doing a literature review, which is we are trying to approach this, try to give a theoretical narrative as well, to see how from a historical perspective, and also nowadays, like in Quebec, the Quebec society. So what have been changed in terms of the interactions and what haven't been changed? So what remains the same? So we are trying to give, from the literature review, we want to give possibly to answer like why is there a gap? So what interactions leads to the gap, and what have we make changes to it, or what should be done in the future, maybe to improve this or to reduce the gap?
Yeah, and I just to add to that answer as well, I think again it's a very excellent question. Why the gaps exist? I think we also have to remember we have to step back from just the racial component or just the linguistic component, and even just look at our economic system overall, either in Canada, in Quebec, but actually the wider global economic system, where by inequality has exacerbated over a given amount of time, to the point where at this point, in my opinion, it's disgusting, the level of inequality we have in the world overall, whereby around, I believe, 62 individuals hold more wealth than the bottom 3.5 billion people on the planet. This is one of the systems in which these different agents are interacting in. So there's already inequality and gaps growing for all kinds of people. And in regards to why it's continued specifically for the Black population as well, or the English-speaking Black population, and the various other subgroups, what I wanted to say is that while it's happening anyways, an aspect, I think how it's been approached thus far here in Canada, how these disparities have even been comprehended and organized and talked about, are a bit limited. And essentially, when I say that there's a lack of information, a lack of data, and even I would say a sense of a lack of will to even look into it, that alone kind of, it for me, represents an answer as to why these gaps have not just grown, but been allowed to grow and been allowed to continue. That's all.
Okay, and I had a question about the gender income gap. Now I noticed there's a large, we were all aware of the large income gap between males and females in society, and it's quite large among the population, but I noticed within the Black population, it's quite narrow. There's not a big difference between income and with men and women. Do you have any ideas what the cause of that is, what the reason behind that is?
Okay, that's a very good question. People say, okay, it's not so much such a big difference in terms of the income gap. Why is that? What does that reflect? I would say that the experiences, especially in regards to the economic lives faced by women and men in general, can be very different, and that is also true in the Black community. But how those differences kind of play themselves out depends and can change, right? So in terms of as to why the income gap, if you really want my honest answer as to why the income gap between Black males and Black females has not increased, well, let's just look at the kind of labor Black males and Black females are working in, and what kind of labor they're already kind of subject to, and what kind of economic opportunities that they already have cut off to them or not. So as a people, the Black community has its issues, and then when you separate the genders and look at male and female, there's also vast differences. But the economic aspect is vastly different, not just in terms of income, but also the types of work people do. So that alone, I would, you know, it's maybe it just happens to so be that the gap isn't as wide as with the other two subgroups, but there certainly is a very different gap. There is a very different experience that both of these subgroups go to, and we can also look at some of the other thematic areas that kind of show that and reveal that a bit more, and specifically moving towards the end of the thematic areas in terms of socio-cultural and psychosocial. While it's a challenge for us to acquire that information right now, I wouldn't be surprised if there's vastly different answers as to how the well-being regarding both of these groups.
Yeah, and also maybe just this is my personal opinion. Yeah, so as we doing a literature review on when they're describing the historical experience and also the experience nowadays, like in Quebec. So one of my guess is, so since the, like at the very, very old time, so we know that the immigrants for like the black male, like they are doing some low wage jobs like in Canada or in Quebec. And also for black female, they're also doing, most of them are doing like domestic jobs, domestic work. So would that play a role in this type of phenomenon that we're seeing, not much a big gap between the male and female? So that's just my personal opinion, but as we said, we are continuing doing the literature review and trying to build a bigger database that could reflect or back up our narrative. So yeah, so hopefully in the future we would also be able to have the chance to look into that perspective as well.
Yeah, very last comment on this. Anyone who wants to kind of further understand this kind of dynamic, I would just say one word: intersectionality. Research it. It talks about how even though we might share, you know, how people's oppression and people's challenges in their life can be very uniquely shaped to them as well, and really expands on. It's a big change in the narrative of what was before a very particular kind of feminist literature, and it's really expanded it to really encompass the different experiences felt by individuals. So that's all I wanted to add as well.
So a kind of related question as well, or a comment rather, from Bani Zahavi says, you know, it would be interesting to see in your study what fields of employment Black men and women are most represented and underrepresented in Quebec. I could probably explain, I guess, part of that gender gap. Another question, did you compare your results with other provinces in Canada, and how does Quebec compare to what's the rest of the country?
Yeah, so in terms of comparing our results to other parts of Canada, we've looked at other parts of Canada to see certain aspects and certain data points. In terms of, for instance, you know, level of inequality, we know tends to be a little bit lower in Quebec than in Canada on average. One group I really want to shout out to is the Color of Poverty, who is an organization based in Toronto.
It would be interesting to see whether English-speaking Black community members are less likely to have jobs with benefits and pensions. Do you have any data on that? Or are you yes,
totally. Well, what I do have is the I'm so sorry for if I was rude there, but what I do have is the data in relation to total Black population in Quebec. When what I found immediately was that even amongst the population of people who are employed, a significantly higher proportion of Black population that's employed is employed in what I would say precarious work, or work with much less job security. So not full time, but oftentimes part-time work, seasonal work. And we all know, well, it's pretty well known at least, that much of these jobs come with much less social security and job security compared to other jobs, of course. The quality of work that the Black community is in is different than other communities as well. The kinds of work we do and the kinds of income or value derived from that work. That's hence the reason, sorry, the last thing I want to say, hence the reason simply saying more jobs, simply creating jobs, and that's it, and that's all, isn't in itself a solution. We have to really interrogate what they mean by that, and what kind of jobs and what kind of employment, economic opportunities are being offered.
Okay, thanks. We have some questions about a question about COVID, impacts of COVID. So we've heard a lot in the news recently about Montréal Nord and the French-speaking Black Hawk population that works disproportionately in long-term care facilities that was affected by COVID. How is COVID affecting the English-speaking Black communities in Quebec? And how do you think this will become visible in the stats and the focus groups?
Great, thank you. So one aspect of how COVID is affecting English-speaking Black community, particularly in Quebec. Okay, so one thing I just wanted to mention is that, well, the English-speaking Black community is quite diverse. One subgroup within the English-speaking Black community happens to be newly arrived immigrants. Let's say immigrants who've been here in Canada for less than 5 years. That subgroup, there's a lot of people in that subgroup who are working in these long-term care facilities. And initially, I'm sure you've heard about the issue of them working in one place and then being transferred to another long-term care facility and moving around working there. So this is a particularly vulnerable group. They're not just members of the English-speaking Black community, but they're new immigrants who, from the data we've seen, are especially vulnerable or especially more likely to be in a bad or very difficult economic situation in Canada. So this is how, just one aspect of how COVID is affecting our community, certain aspect, but quite frankly, I think, you know, it's obviously affecting all of us as well. Yeah.
So a related question, you know, you mentioned that there are, you know, a lot of the recently arrived Black immigrants are working in these long-term care facilities and lower-end jobs. Do you have data on, or are you planning to differentiate data between Black people who have been established for a long time here in Quebec compared to more recent immigrants? And if so, what have you found in your initial survey?
Yeah, no, we have data, plenty of data that's very clear that the newly established immigrants in Canada have a much time gaining economic stability and have faced very serious economic challenges, whether they're Black or not. Depending on what group you fit in, the challenges may differ, but being a newly arrived immigrant automatically puts you in a position where you're challenged in a way that's fairly harsh and unique.
Yeah, and also in the survey that we intended to design and collect data in the community, we also designed questions asking about the immigration status or, for example, how long have you been in Canada, etc. So for there, we are trying to see so how are people how's the integration into the society are happening in the ESBC, and also what are the challenges for people who just recently arrived in Quebec, or compared to people who are already been here for a long time, because it might happen as well, even for people who has been here for such a long time, or second generation, third generation, they still feel the same challenges as the newly arrival. So that's a very, thank you for that question. And that's also very important aspect in our survey design as well.
We have a comment from Lucy Glave, who says that it's vital that the business community be conscious of your research. You know, perhaps Lucy could say more in the survey. A question on education opportunities, the issue of newly arrived Black-speaking immigrants sending their kids to French schools with English-speaking parents. Is that part of your study, or are you going to be looking at that as part of your study? And if so, tell us a bit more.
That's certainly a part of a study, in the sense that it falls under our understanding of Quebec's social historical context. So we're very well aware of the Official Language Act and how schooling in Quebec has changed for young people and in regards to language. I'm personally someone who is also in that situation of having to go to a French school, even though I come from an English background as an immigrant at the time. So that is certainly a part of the study. It's an aspect we look at in terms of the educational things. How do kids who are put in that situation kind of react to it? Sometimes it doesn't work out for them. They struggle very much. But this issue of the schooling and what language kids are being learned is more than an educational issue. It comes right up to the very structures of power in Quebec. So that's how we're looking at it as well. It's just one aspect that kind of links back to the wider system that we're trying to comprehend here.
Yes, a similar question would be: Is bilingualism a road to, social mobility? Does the data show that?
Look, I think it definitely is a window for opportunity. I think that there's in terms of language and linguistic politics, the last thing I'm advocating is for walls or for not. So I always say, I encourage, and I'll never stop encouraging, picking up another language and learning another language, especially the official language of the province, if that's the case. If you can, if you're afforded the ability to do so. So I think there's a really great potential for sharing information across languages or between different language groups. I think bilingual people are very key people in that process in terms of aligning French ideas with ideas happening in the English community. And the only thing I'll warn is about language being used as a way of creating walls and as a way of really just reflecting a whole identity in competition or in opposition or in difference to a whole other identity. Yeah. So bilingualism is key. I completely encourage it. Trilingualism, as many languages as possible, for the sole purpose that it helps. They have the ability to connect different groups of people.
One more question here, Don. The government is now allowing, this is a question from comment from Luan question. The government is now allowing immigrants who have foreign credentials in the medical field to practice due to the pandemic. It would be interesting to know the proportion of Black people who are now practicing.
Thank you. Yes, that's a great. Yeah, I agree. I agree that is something that we should take from this question of foreign credentials being recognized in Canada is one that's been asked well before this COVID crisis, and now that we're in this crisis and in this situation that's taken everyone's attention. I'm glad that at least that's an issue that people want to talk about and further explore in that sense. A lot of people who are freshly arrived immigrants come with credentials. They just earned them somewhere else. And a lot of oftentimes they're not given, that those credentials aren't given the same recognition or the same credit as being educated in Canada or maybe in another Western country setting. And that's a cause of exclusion.
Another question. Are you looking at youth protection statistics? Question from Jennifer Cook.
Excellent question. Now, we have one of the people in our research network is very much involved in that aspect of things, and we are consulting with them to kind of gauge that issue, youth protection, as well as just the wider situation for youth, Black youth, and so on and so forth. One thing I do understand is that it's particularly challenging if kids aren't in school in terms of having teachers signal if they suspect that the child is facing abuse at home or has that kind of issue. So this overall kind of era we're in, this kind of situation we're in, has kind of impeded that process. I'd love to learn more about how so, but in terms of youth protection, let's say in the context of Black youth, we do have a particular member on our research committee whose whole vast majority of their experience is particularly in that sector.
Okay, thank you very much. So that wraps it up for today. I will share. I encourage everybody to subscribe to QUESCREN's newsletter. I have just shared a link in the chat group. If you're interested in future Lunch and Learn events, our next one is going to be with EdTech specialist Richard Schmidt, who's going to be looking at adapting to online education, the quality of online education. And we also had for people who are interested in English-speaking Blacks in Quebec, we had an event in March called From Vulnerability to Vitality that had been planned but had to be postponed due to the COVID epidemic. And we're we are currently rescheduling that into 2 half-day events, one in September and another one in March. So again, if you're interested in those, I encourage you to sign up to our newsletter. We will be posting this video online if you missed part of it on our YouTube channel. And I'd like to thank John and Xiaoyan for an excellent presentation, and wish you a happy rest of day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you
you
so much for joining us today.